What's up, guys? I'm going to answer a quick question really quick. And this had to do with a recent post about horizontal prowler presses I was doing. So before I dive into what this reason why I was doing it, let me give you a little background into what it was. So essentially I had a prowler set up, and with that I had a measuring tape as well. And I was doing ballistic pushes, so I was throwing and pushing the prowler as far as I could and measuring the distance at which the prowler traveled. I made sure to set up the tape so it was at release of my hands. So when I pushed the prowler and released it, it was basically at the starting position. And I measured how far that prowler traveled. And then I took multiple loads and I measured the distance. So I essentially had a distant load profile. If we know distance, right, it's essentially peak velocity. So it was a velocity load profile. Now, why did I do it? Well, first off, if we're assuming that the conditions are standardized, we do that same thing every time. We can use that information. Obviously, as we use different surfaces, the coefficient of friction changes, and that actually plays a role into whether or not we can use these metrics comparatively amongst others if we have different surfaces. But if you're using the same surface, it becomes reliable. So the question is, why did I do this? And typically in a bench press movement, typically if we're going to profile a horizontal movement, we use the bench press. We might use something like a GymAware or a Tendo unit and get a load velocity profile. The issue is it's really difficult to utilize a bench press or to do a bench press throw, because obviously it's pretty dangerous to try and catch it. And so the question is, how do we begin to, profile these ballistic movements for upper body in a safe way that we can't do in the same manner that we can do lower body, right? Because we can do jumps, we can do sprints pretty easy, but with the upper body, doing a ballistic bench press probably isn't the most enticing thing to do. So using a prowler was an option for that. Now when doing it, the idea was to isolate your upper body. So we're not using our legs, we're not stepping through. However, if you wanted to use the step and push and well, use more of a total body movement, you can use that as well. And so when I talk about different ways to be creative, it's understanding the concepts which we can use and then applying those to have a flexible structure. And so what I mean by that, if we understand that load and distance are essentially load and velocity, and if our surface is the same, and we have someone do a max effort push, whether it be upper body or a single step with that prowler, we can use that as a means to track progress over time, assuming that we have defined that push as a specific KPI or a progress indicator. So is it a key performance indicator, and for what is it indicating? And if you're just using it as a total upper body movement in a position that's more sport specific, that's wonderful. So now you have the ability to profile it, but because you had the ability to profile it, you can now use it as a means of readiness. So how far does someone push it today versus the day before? Are they higher? Are they lower? Do I need to adjust the training program because they're up a little bit or down a little bit? And so now you can have something that's reliable and easy to reproduce, assuming you get the positions correct, to start to track information. And you can use this concept for a multitude of different things. And so I got messing around with some toys, and we have radar guns at our facility. And so we were using radar guns as well. And so maybe if we take the same concept, velocity and load, and we know that neuromuscularly, our ability to produce, a certain velocity at a load is related to our central nervous system, and our ability of our muscular system to produce force, and its variability dictates how ready we are for that day. Or even monitoring progress. We can use any means that is standardized in a way that we can replicate over and over again, such as a velocity throw against the wall. And we can use that as a way of readiness, right? What's your rotational velocity of a med ball throw for that day, and how does that compare? And that same token, you can also profile it. So maybe you use a different light load, heavy load, a heavier load, and you begin to look at, okay, what velocities do they produce at these different med balls and different movements? Or you can do a chest pass, you can do rotation, you can do a push. And so all these things can be used as a way to leverage different means of the same concept, right? Velocity and load, but applying it into your setting. Now, in that same token, you can, if worse comes to worse, this piece of equipment where you're using a sled and you're pushing as far as you can is just an awesome way to get feedback. It makes it competitive. How far did you press it? Oh, you pressed it, 3 inches further than your buddy, or 3 inches further than the last time you did it. Well, now that's a means of motivation, and that breeds competition, which can lead to higher intent. So we have the ability to profile, we have the ability to track readiness, and we have the ability to add motivation to the training itself. And plus, it's just a damn good exercise, right? Not many times we have a heavy loaded, because you can load a prowler pretty heavy, horizontal ballistic like movement. And so when we take these concepts, when we take these methods, we can load velocity, whether it's a Tendo unit, a jump height device, an accelerometer, a measuring tape, a box height. You can begin to use this as a means to track certain movements and profiles, and this allows you to be really creative. So this is why when I talk to people about some of these concepts, I get really excited about, because there isn't this specific bed of research that says you only have to use X, Y, or Z, but here's the concept, here's how that research paper used the concept, right? A load velocity profile on a Tendo unit. Well, that same concept can be applied now to distance traveled on a horizontal broad jump, or maybe distance traveled on a press that you're doing with some sort of the ballistic prowler press. Or maybe you now invert it, you have long TRX straps on it, you attach a rope to it, and now you're doing horizontal pulls, and you're seeing how far you can pull the sled. And so these are all ways to get more information on the individual. Are they ever going to be perfect? Absolutely not. Right, this isn't a research setting, we're in a fluid setting, and we're going to try and get the most that we can out of what we have. And so whether it's ballistic profiling of a Tendo unit bench press that you're able to throw somehow, but probably not, maybe it's a horizontal push on the prowler, right? That's where it all stems from. And so the concept is load and velocity. How can you measure velocity? How can you infer velocity, maybe based on distance? Maybe directly measuring it with a radar gun. Whatever equipment that you have, you can better, even if you have a timing gate, right? And you set the distance up over a specific distance, and you wanted to see how fast that, device or that, say, prowler went through the timing gate over, 3 feet. If you know the distance, you know the mean velocity that took for that prowler to get through. And so now you have a way to measure velocity, even if you don't have a measuring tape. So again, probably more expensive to have a timing gate to do such, but maybe it gives you different insights that you want to look at. Again, concept, load, velocity, you take it, you play with it, you apply it, try it out. You might fail a couple times, you might succeed a couple times, but every time you try it out, you have the opportunity to get something that's really beneficial away from it. Hopefully that answered the question, guys. It's a really cool topic. I hope to dive into a little bit more. I appreciate you listening, and feel free to share it. Thanks.